Hello, everyone. Brandon Burbank here, and I have got a wonderful opportunity to talk with professional speaker Mike Veny. And yeah, so we're gonna in this interview we're gonna be talking about mental health and also just how mental health is an important part of all of our lives, and especially for those that have been impacted by mental health struggles, mental illness, and things like that. So with that being said, I've got Mike Veny, professional speaker here, and we're going to be talking about just mental health related questions and just breaking down just various components on how to become a better individual and find success within your life. With that being said, Mike, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on your show here. A little bit about me. I'm a mental health speaker by trade, and that wasn't my choice of career. It's something that I fell into because of my own mental health challenges. And for most of my life, I've battled depression. I've got major depressive disorder, anxiety, and obsessive compulsive disorder to the point where it makes life debilitating, where I can't function. And as a child, I was hospitalized 3 times in a mental hospital for extended periods. Um, I attempted to die by suicide at age 10. I was expelled from 3 schools, medicated so much, and just all I knew was just being in crisis for most of my youth. And so, as an adult, things started to get better. The thing that turned my life around was drumming, actually hitting stuff. Made things a lot better, and I still struggle though to this day, and I have to work very hard to maintain my mental health. I don't even want to say each day, every hour, to be very honest with you.
Cool. Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Mike. And then we're going to just go through a bunch of other questions. The next question that I have is, how does your story inspire you to talk about mental health through being a professional speaker?
Oh, why you got to ask good questions? That's a really good question. I I know what it's like to suffer, and I remember it was in 2011. I was driving my car, and I had just had another breakdown, and I was suffering. And when you have a breakdown, I mean, it's different for everybody. There's not one way of defining that, but it was bad. It was really bad. And I said to myself one day, I was just so angry, so frustrated with my mental health because I wanted it to go away. I just wanted it to go away so I could quote unquote feel normal, as they like to say. And I realized that I was suffering, and I realized other people were probably suffering even much worse than me. And I learned this a while ago. I forgot where I learned the quote from, but everybody has pain. No one needs to suffer. And I said, I think I need to do what I need to do so nobody else goes through this like me. And at that point, I set out on a mission to help others as best I could who were privately suffering with mental health challenges.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you for answering that. I have another question. What are some of the ways that the mental health community needs to be more aware of to be successful?
How much time do I have for this answer, Brandon?
It's
Um,
open-ended, so
no, what does the mental health community need to do to be more successful? Well, first of all, I think it's important to continue the conversation. And one thing I say to advocates all the time, advocates around any topic are very passionate people. And sometimes we get so passionate that we start correcting people. It's like, oh, no, 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 no. You're not supposed to say that about this. Here's how you say it in the right way. And what happens is when we start focusing on correcting people all the time, we put a wall between us and them, and we're not connecting with them. And this is something I've learned the hard way, that sometimes being aggressive with people about the thing that you're passionate about can have the reverse effect. So I think it's really important that we learn to listen to people where they are at in their story, in their journey, how they're talking about mental health, and look for teachable moments to help them whenever we can. Also, it's important that we do our best to be role models for self care. I know that I meet advocates in all walks of life who are passionate advocates, but they don't go to therapy and they don't take care of themselves. And I'm like, how are you going around telling people about this and you don't, go to therapy or take care of yourself? So I think it's important that we walk the talk and do that, whatever that means for us. And this way we will be role models for others, but really just keeping those conversations happening about it, normalizing it, and also not glorifying mental health struggles. Because sometimes, again, being very passionate, We could start to glorify the person who's been through all this and we don't realize that we're doing it. So it's important to obviously recognize when someone has struggled and acknowledge it, but no need to glorify it and make it into that. So it's this weird balance that we're always trying to strike, but those are some things that I believe the mental health community can do to answer your question.
Cool. Yeah. That definitely answered the question. Um, the next question I have is, how can an individual living with a mental illness make their own comeback to success when faced with a mental health struggle?
Oh, wow. I just want to say, I really respect you. From the moment you met me at the NSA conference, great respect for you and the work you're doing. That's a great question right there.
Thank you, Mike.
I don't know if there's one right answer, but here are a few clues that have helped others. When you have gone through a mental health struggle, maybe a mental health breakdown, it's really important that you have a support team in place. Now, that's easier said than done. A support team isn't necessarily a formal thing. It could mean just one friend and a therapist and someone from your mental health support group. But it's important to have people in place in your life that you can lean on to reach out to when you're struggling, to have uncomfortable conversations with who can help encourage you to get back on track because coming back from a mental health struggle isn't easy. It's not like you just have a breakdown and I don't know, I let it out. Now I can just come back and no, it doesn't work like that. Sometimes it takes years to come back. I was just in a conversation about this actually before we recorded this, where I had a breakdown several years ago, and it was horrific. It was horrific. In fact, horrific to the point I remember the exact house I was in front of on the streets of New York when I knew it was happening. And it felt like in a movie, like sometimes in action movies, an elevator just drops. They cut the cable and it just drops from the top floor to the bottom floor. And that's what I felt inside my body. I'll never forget that. And I knew that I was in a really bad place. I thought it just happened in one day, but it actually was spiraling for years, and I didn't realize it. I didn't want to realize it. Oftentimes we don't want to face when we're struggling. We just want it to go away, and that's what I was doing. Needless to say, I had this breakdown that lasted almost a year. That lasted almost a year, and the recovery from that. I'll be honest with you. This is like 5 years ago. I'm still recovering from it. One of the hardest things I ever had to hear was from my psychiatrist when she said to me that I always would tell her that I didn't feel like myself. I was disassociating where you just lose touch with reality. And I didn't feel like myself. Like I felt like I was in someone else's body, even though I knew who I was, but I didn't. And she let me know very, very nicely that, because of that intense breakdown, some part of my brain changed chemically. And I'm never going to be able to get that old Mike back. This is the new me now. And that was really, really hard to hear. But I'm starting to really embrace the new me, whatever that is, and realize that this new me might be different at some point in the future too. But it's been a journey of constantly making sure I get to therapy every week, go to my mental health support group. I have not been good with that lately. I will admit I've used my travel schedule as an excuse. So thank you, Brandon, for making me accountable here. And also just basic self-care, like making sure I get my sleep and take my medication and stuff like that. So it's a process, not a journey, but you have to be willing to do the work, realize that it doesn't happen overnight. So sorry for that very long answer.
No, it's okay. You're providing a lot of background from your personal experience. And I think that's what a lot of my follower base and fans want to understand so that they can become more successful, especially for those that have been impacted by mental health struggle or even mental illness.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, moving on to the next question. What vision do you have on mental health stigma as the world changes and awareness is being accepted throughout the world?
I love your questions. I love these questions. My vision is that we're not talking about it at some point because we don't need to. You know, Back in the day, hundreds of years ago, someone had to admit that they had allergies and started to cry about the fact that they had allergies and whoa, they have allergies. Can you believe that? And people had to start talking about allergies and normalizing the conversation. We don't do that with allergies anymore. I mean, you just know how to take care of your allergies, and if you have them, you have them. You live your life. That's my vision for mental health, is that we're not talking about it as this special topic that we need to discuss, but it's a part of being human for all of us. Now, some of us have what we call serious mental illness. Other people just have some mental health challenges. Other people just have stress. Regardless, it's part of the human experience. And I hope, in my vision, that we start to normalize that where, people don't have to go to YouTube and just find videos on it because nobody's talking about it. That's what I'm hoping for. So thank you for that question.
Yeah, definitely. The next question I have is, how did you make your mental health recovery?
Ooh, you know, again, a great question. Sometimes that word recovery is confusing for people because if you think of like recovery from uh, the flu, well, you have the flu a few days, I don't know, maybe a week or two at most, and you get to the point where you get better and the flu's gone, hopefully, right? Mental health recovery doesn't work like that. So I used to think when I would hear that term recovery, oh my gosh, someday my depression, anxiety, and OCD will be gone. Yay. But that's not how recovery works. Recovery is this journey that you're constantly on. So I made it by committing to myself that I needed to do this and admitting to myself that I need help. One of the hardest things for us to do as humans is to admit that we need help. We want to be people that muscle through things and seem strong. And we often think that if we struggle with mental health, there's a weakness. No.
Yeah, definitely. I can relate to that. Definitely when I was 19, 20 years old and my young adult, early 20s, I was going through a lot of mental health struggles myself. And I was the type of person, the way I was raised, just, oh, I can do it all on my own. And I just, I kept ended up in the hospital. And so it's like I had to learn how to regroup, readjust myself, and start asking for help from others.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that, and I get it. And it's very hard for people to do. It's hard for all of us to do. And like you, I grew up in the same kind of environment, and I think a lot of people watching this have too. And so it's really important to remember that a good part of recovery is just accepting that you've got a mental health condition and
Yeah.
it's okay.
That's what I
And
talk about in my book with radical acceptance. That's the word.
love that radical acceptance. Yes, I love that. And so that's basically what I did for my recovery.
Cool. We'll move on to the next question then. Why are there so many people diagnosed with a mental illness who are living but not actually living their best life?
Oh, you ask the best questions. I love it. I love it. Why are they not living their best life? Well, I think the mental health system in America, and when I say that, I'm talking about the system for getting treatment, has a long way to go. A long way to
Yeah,
go.
I
You know,
agree.
we could have several hours of video about that, you and me. But basically, when someone is diagnosed with a mental health condition, sometimes they're diagnosed because they were forced to confront something they didn't want to. When I talk about mental health, I think we're talking about three things: thoughts, feelings, and behavior. Any one of those has a challenge, you've got a mental health challenge. And usually it's behavior that you realize something is wrong, and someone usually has to confront you for it, and you end up hopefully getting treatment. But oftentimes with that treatment, you're not addressing the stigma surrounding it, the fact that you have to show up in the world. And so many people, I think, don't live their best life because they often hide. They feel they have to hide behind a mask and say, okay, I just need to show up for work and smile, and we're not going to let anyone know that I'm battling schizophrenia. No, we're not going to let anyone know that. And so that's one of the reasons. And also sometimes there's self-esteem challenges that come. I have a family member who has mental illness too, and he said one of the hardest things about having a mental illness is being told that you have a mental illness. Mm, that hit me really hard when he said that to me because I could relate to that. So a lot of times people with mental illness battle with self-esteem challenges that come with that label in and of itself. And so I think that's one of the other reasons. And also another reason in my mind is they don't realize that with mental illness, you also have a lot of gifts that you don't realize. You see, those of us who battle with this stuff, we are constantly going to therapy and support groups and learning about it and reading books and all this stuff. And with all that stuff comes a lot of self-awareness and growth. And we actually start to discover our talents. But many people don't realize that they're discovering talents. They just think they're trying to survive each day. So I think it's important to realize that in your mental illness recovery journey, you're going to be discovering a lot about yourself. And it's important to be open to that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and just accepting yourself as you are fully,
Yeah.
wholeheartedly is the first step towards any type of recovery, any type of happiness and success that you're seeking.
Yes, I absolutely agree.
Okay. And then another question we have is, do you have anything else to add or share with the community in this interview?
Yes, for those of you watching, I encourage you, if you have never gotten treatment or therapy or counseling, to pursue it and realize that therapy and counseling is not going to change things overnight. It's not like you got a broken arm and you go to the doctor and they put it in a cast and it gets better in a few weeks. It doesn't work like that. It's a journey. It's a journey, and sometimes a very frustrating and messy journey. But it's important to know that when you're willing to do the work, and you might not see this, there's gold on the other side, but you have to be willing to do that work. So I encourage all of you out there to do that work, whatever it is for you.
Great. Thank you so much, Mike, for doing this interview.
Thank you for having me.
And I just want to say thank you, everybody, for tuning in on this interview today on my YouTube channel and future podcasts. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to like the video and also leave a comment down below. And guys, I hope you have a great rest of your day and stay blessed. Take care, guys.
Take care.